Welcome back to another stream we're doing here. Okay, so hopefully I'm loud enough this time. I don't think I was loud enough last time, so hopefully I am. All right, here's the deal. Um, we're gonna go over the Afghanistan paper. So I promised it to you guys. I hope I'm not dirty because I just got home from work. The chats, if you want to drop if you want to drop a chat, drop a chat. That way, I put some tests on there. So far, I think I got Twitch working. I got X working. I don't know about any of the other ones. Anyways, okay, so I don't want to take up time. I only have so much time. This is going to be split into parts. So what I want to talk about first is about the history of Islamic extremism. So some of you guys with recent events, which, for everything that's been going on lately, what I want to say is it's not that we shouldn't be worried about it. We should be worried about Islamic extremism. But one of the things that I want to talk about in the beginning here, just because I feel like it's important, um, well, if I can find it, let's see, is the actual history of like Islamic extremism. Like, this isn't something that just cropped up overnight. Like, this is something that has been going on for a long, long, long time. Okay, so don't get it in your head and don't get it twisted that this is like something new. Um, we knew. So, quick history for those of you who maybe are younger. Osama bin Laden already tried to bomb the World Trade Center once. He blew up the basement. His goal was to knock one tower into another and then hopefully knock both of the towers down. Now that didn't work, but my point is he was on our radar. So the problem is basically the short story is that the CIA was more worried about Russia, and we had a small Islamic terrorism desk after this time, but we didn't take it seriously. So lesson learned here for the people who, the past is doomed to repeat itself. Now, a lot of people ask, why? Why did Osama bin Laden hate us so much? Well, that's a great question. Um, I don't know the full answer to that, but what I will tell you is that was, um, he was the rich kid of Saudi parents. So he already had like some Saudi parents back in the day, and so that, excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm gonna end up finding what I'm looking for. Okay. Yeah, I might. Okay, sorry guys, I know this is critical streaming here. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna find it. Okay, I had got some. Okay, here we go. Okay. So there was a guy around the 7th century CE. So this is when Prophet Muhammad's death is in 1632. So the Muslim community split. And basically the Sunnis backed Abu Bakr, who the Shias all wanted Ali. Um, they had a Fatna, a civil war, 16. Fast forward to the 18th century. So this is 1700s for those of you who forget that when we say 18, that means back it up one. Okay, so fast forward to that, you have your modern Islamic kickoff. You got Muhammad Abi al-Wahhab. So this is 703 to 1792. In This is when in Arabia revives Sufism. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but this is pushing hardcore Islam back to its basics. So strip away all the innovations like saint worship and Sufi stuff, declare idolatry and a jihad against anyone not on board. So now you're starting to get to your modern Islam extreme that we see. So that, and I'm like I said, that this isn't like all. So, But okay, so then your Saudi Arabia's founders created um, Wahhabi Saudi axis. So Wahhabism wasn't always violent, but it justified robbing, killing, and unbelievers. So it was a more dramatic effect. You know what I'm saying? So, okay. So, by the 20th century, this evolves into in Egypt, a Muslim Brotherhood guy gets radicalized under Nasir. He's got a book called Milestones. It calls for global jihad. And in modern societies, including, it was overthrown. So, basically, he was hanged in 66 for his ideas, but it fuels Al Qaeda, ISIS, and things like blending Wahhabi purity with Brotherhood activism. All right, bottom line, it isn't inherent to most Islam, but yeah. So, okay, all right. Now on to a little bit of my um, experience and what I know. And I'm going to look this book up while I talk about this. So basically, one thing you need to know is we've had extremism sects that have taken over massive places in Islamic countries, but we have to understand that it isn't the norm in all of, the Arab Peninsula or Southeast Asia. So there is a book, and I don't know if I can get to my library because I discontinued my thing, but it was called, man, I'm gonna have to scroll down so far. I read so many books. Pashtun was a good one. That's not it though. I don't know if I'm gonna find it. Taliban Safari, no. Man, nope. Sorry, guys. I really wish I could because it is the book, and I should have found it before the stream. But basically, this book talks about a guy who was a Pakistani, and he spent a lot of time with the Taliban. Like, literally, he's wrote like 3 versions of this book, I think. And it basically, he talks about the Taliban and kind of the birth of extremism and kind of his way as a Muslim guy to kind of, and as a journalist, to show people that they aren't one and the same. And it's super duper good. And I wish I could find it, but I'm not going to. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to give it up. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but great book. So recommend it. Okay. So what he talks about in there is basically about how you will have that there are young men in Arab culture, and the women will go to these schools, and what they'll do is at the age of like 10 to 12, or maybe even 8, the girls, they drop out, and then what happens is well, they finish up the school they're allowed to do, and then the men continue. But a lot of times, like, this is the only men's education. So for a lot of people, that want to say that, oh well, they're just that they're uneducated people. It's because a lot of times the madrasas, the religious schools, are the only way they can get education. So basically what happens is these young men, and a lot of times they're poached, and he talks about this in the book, is that there's a young man, he's homeless, or he gets kicked out of his home because his parents are like, you can't afford it, you got to go make it on your own. Then these madrasas, the more extreme ones, which, like I said, is a religious school, they find these young men, and what they do is then they take them and they say, okay, hey man, we'll give you a purpose and we'll give you a cause. And so then they get them really religious, and then they're teaching a very radicalized version of the Quran. And then they basically, that's how they get radicalized. Sometimes it's other things, you know. A lot of times that, you know, our own military action will radicalize people. But all right, on to current events. So last I heard, I'm not going to sit here and go through the news right now because I've got so much stuff pulled up on my computer right now. I don't want to mess with it. So basically, this guy allegedly got brought over here. They said he was vetted. Here's my problem. And any of you guys that follow me that has heard any of my political opinions will realize that I am neither left or right. And so what I hear from the Trump administration is a bunch of blaming Biden for bringing this dude over here, be that as it may. That could be true. Biden's administration said they were vetted. Now there's people saying that he wasn't vetted, and then it's like, was he vetted or not? Now I'm going to tell you from personal stories is I will say that when we would bring, so there would, like, if an interpreter worked with us enough and he did enough deployments with enough units, then he could be vetted and brought over. And some of those guys became citizens of the U.S. and then stayed with the military on contract and like deployed with us. And they were like interpreters. So they like went back and like fought the same war, but they didn't have to, like some of them. But, anyways, so what that's going to cause is, that's going to cause people to get over here that may or may not be vetted completely. And even if somebody vets you, that doesn't mean you can't hide something. Like, I get it, but like if anybody's been to Afghanistan, you'll understand what I mean. Like, if you ask somebody who your cousin is, it's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I mean, you know, no one knows. So that's just some crazy junk. As far as like how they're blaming the other side, and then the right is, well, the right's claiming that Biden did it, and that it, you know, it was the whole Abby Gates situation, and the left is basically saying, I don't even know what they're saying, to be honest. I don't know. I haven't even heard. I think they're saying that they were vetted, but you know, it's our own fault for radicalizing. I don't know. But anyway, personal opinion, I'm gonna put it to you this way. I think he was vetted. There's talk that he worked for the CIA. So if he worked for the CIA, then why wouldn't he have been vetted? So I think they did something to piss this guy off. I don't know what that is. Don't ask me. But obviously he got screwed over somehow, or he just, I don't know, kind of got radicalized through a religious mosque somewhere. I don't know, you know, because I'm not saying that we have this here. Like, if anybody sits here and thinks that Muslim extremism is not in this country, you're crazy. It is. It's been here since before, you know, the whole Osama bin Laden in 1993. Is what I'm saying is it's been here, you know. So there's no like, it just cropped up yesterday. And I will, you know, but I'll say this is a failure on the FBI and on, you know, because then I'm sure that for every one incident like this, there's 100 that they've caught. So going out there and blaming the FBI, blaming the administration, blaming the previous administration isn't going to get us anywhere. I'm going to tell you where it is going to get you, and that's what I'm going to roll into next. So, all right, I promised the Afghanistan papers, and I want to tell you that I'm going to lean very heavily on this, because basically the Washington Post did this for us. But the problem is people don't know. Like, they did a like 3-year investigation, and then like tons of Freedom of Information Act requests. So like all this junk is already here. It's just, you just have to dig it out and find it. So here we go. All right. Let's do this and put it up right here. And well, hold up. It'd be cool if it worked. Oh no, window capture. Ooh, don't do that. I don't know what it's gonna capture if I undo something. Sorry guys. I'm working it. Okay, there it is. Boom. All right. So, like I said, they've already done this. So, we're going to go through this and we're going to check it out. Okay, here we go. One thing that we have is what I want to talk about is the Cigars Project. So, now I'm not going to talk about the Cigars Project off the bat. That's not the first thing I'm going to cover, and the reason is because the cigar and without me getting the acronym, it is the name of when the U.S. government decided that they wanted a lessons learned from Afghanistan. The project acronym is called the Cigars. And so if I mention the Cigars Project, that's what I'm talking about. And to be honest, let's just roll back here for a second and I will get the name of it because I feel like everybody needs to know the name. Oh, God. Oh, man, I'm clicked on the wrong thing. Now I'm screwed. Oh, no. My bad, guys. Sorry. God. Let me see if it's in here. Okay. Here we go. This is what I wanted. Okay. So, this is the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction. So, this is it right here. Okay. So, like I said, good on the Washington Post. They did many of Freedom of Information Act to get this information. So, like I said, I'm just putting it out there. And if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat. I hope to see them. So I'm gonna move this over here so that I can kind of half read and half see myself. Okay. All right. So basically, we're gonna start with I want to start with the strategy, okay? And the reason is because this is kind of where the Cigars Project, by the way, cost $11 million. So for them to come up with all this stuff and basically say, hey, this is how we screwed up, it cost them $11 million. So, first of all, off the rip, that is ridiculous. And I can't believe we paid for that, but okay. So now knowing that cost $11 million, let's get into it. So basically, this compiles hundreds of confidential reviews that constitute a secret history of the war. The U.S. and allied officials admit they veered off in directions that had little to do with Al Qaeda or not, by expanding the original mission. So I guess I should give a brief, and I'm going to make it brief. And if you haven't read the book, The Horse Soldiers, I think is what it's called. Read that book. So Al Qaeda hatches a plan, and Al Qaeda is basically when Al Qaeda is the extreme arm, okay, of an Islamic extremist group in Afghanistan. So the Taliban runs the country, but at this time, Al Qaeda is an offshoot, okay, not of the Taliban directly, but they are an extremist group. Even the Taliban is not claiming them. So understand that. They fly planes into the towers. It was a hatched plan. There's a lot of conspiracies there. I'm not getting into 9/11 conspiracies today, but I will say that Building 7, WCT7, there's some good ones out there. So if that's your thing, get into that. But that's not what this is about. This is about the government's fuck up in this whole thing. So we get in there. 9/11 happens. If anybody's seen that famous George Bush speech where he gets up there and he's like, grabs the microphone, and if anybody wasn't alive or didn't see this or wants to go back and watch this, it gives me the chills. I watched it like a week ago and it gave me the chills. Like he gets up there and the firefighter, he's like helping dig through the rubble of 9/11 because they're still finding alive bodies in there. And he gets up there and he holds the microphone out and somebody's like, we can't hear you. And somebody hands him the megaphone and he goes, but I can hear you. And like, and he's like, and the world will hear us. And man, like he is a great, like, I'm gonna tell you, I said it on my last podcast. If that don't make you want to go to war, shit. It was a good one. So anyway, so the CIA, this great book. I might have to put, I don't have show notes. So there's a good book about the CIA, the first dude that went into Afghanistan with the team with CIA, not the horse soldiers book. That's from the soldiers' perspective. But this one is the CIA dude talking about how they took like $2 million cash or like $1 million cash. Like, they didn't even know who they were going to pay, which we ended up spending a lot more money than that. But like, this is like the very beginning, and they're like meeting with the warlords and giving them like 100K, and like it was crazy. But anyway, they take out Al Qaeda. They took them out. They were gone. Like, they were no more. Like, for the most part, they fled the country within like 365 days. Between them, the Green Berets, and the massive amount of air power we flew over Afghanistan, it was done. But we had no plan. We had no plan, and we stayed. And so here is the basically, this is going to be the you know, this is going to be the reason why, you know. A lot of dudes died. A lot of people didn't make it. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Because a lot of those people didn't have to die. And, you know, through here, we're going to go through some of the stuff that was said and stuff like that. So, all right. So, and we're going to start off with this. So, now this is going to jump around in the timeline. So, it may not talk about the initial, like, we're not going to go time for time. It's going to talk about what people were saying. So, all right. Richard Butcher, who served as the State Department's top diplomat for South Asia from 2006 2009, added to a transcript of what he called government interviewers in 2015. He added, "We have to say good is good enough, and that is why we're there 15 years ago. We are trying to achieve the unachievable instead of the achievable." So here we go, right here. It says their strategies differ between Bush and Obama, but they both committed early blunders that they never recovered from. After a succession of quick military victories from 2001 to 2002, Bush decided to keep a light force of U.S. troops in Afghanistan to indefinitely hunt for terrorists, suspected terrorists. Soon, however, he made plans to invade another nation, Iraq, and Afghanistan quickly became an afterthought. So, like, that, the biggest lesson to learn here from the beginning is we basically took our eyes off of it. And when we took our eyes off of it, in the book that I mentioned that talked about the Taliban, he talked about the resurgence of Al Qaeda during that time. So, like, after we kind of turned a blind eye, but we left troops here, like in Afghanistan, they just were like, oh, okay, well, they're not like hunting us. So they came back. So, James Dobbins, a career diplomat who served for a special envoy for Afghanistan under Bush and Obama, told interviewers it was a hubris mistake that should have been obvious from the start. He said, "First of all, you sort of invade one country at a time." I mean that seriously, Dobbins said. "They take a lot of high-level attention and time and will overload the system if we do more of these." By the time Obama took office in 2009, Al-Qaeda had largely vanished from Afghanistan, but the Taliban had made a comeback. Now, there's a little bit of miss here where it says the Taliban came back. This is a little bit of both. You know, they're gonna these papers don't get super in detail about like the differences between the Taliban and Al Qaeda, but I think that for the most part we'll just keep it how they wrote it. So Bush had this counterterrorism strategy, and Obama basically tore it up. He put a massive counterinsurgency campaign backed by 150,000 U.S. and NATO troops. Oh, I was like, what's that ding? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, guys. That's the dryer or washing machine. He also had tons of aid for the Afghan government. So, because we're basically propping up the Afghan government. So, in contrast with Bush, Obama imposed strict deadlines and promised to bring home all the troops by the end of his presidency. But Obama's strategy was also destined to fail, as U.S. and NATO and Afghan allies told the government interviewers they tried to accomplish too much too quickly. Some of these pictures might be pretty graphic. This is a medevac Marine hit with IED in Helmand Province in 2011. Damn, it's the same time I was there. Oh, shit. I don't know that guy. I don't think. No, I don't recognize him. Okay, but Obama's strategy was also destined to fail. So there were a number of faulty assumptions in the strategy. Afghanistan is ready for a democracy. The population will support the government in a short time frame. Bob Crowley, a retired Army colonel, said over the past 18 years, more than 775,000 troops have been deployed to Afghanistan repeatedly. Of those, 2,300 died there. 20,589 come home wounded. Today, so this is, I don't remember when this thing came out, but it said today there are 13,000 U.S. troops still there. So the U.S. military acknowledges the Taliban is stronger than ever. There was no 9/11 commission, none of that. So we just didn't know. And on top of the fact that these papers make a good point when they talk about the fact that there was no government, like the Afghanistan government, like you can't, the types of people that live there, they're tribal. And because they're tribal, they only trust people from their own tribe. It would be like us, for example, only trusting Mexicans, or white people only trusting, well, like Europeans, and like, Asians only trusting Asians. And like, that's how it is. But they all look the same. So they look the same, but they're from a different tribe. And so these different tribals, I mean, they love to go to war, and they've been at war. They were at war when we got there in 2001. They were already embroiled in the Civil War. They stay embroiled in Civil War. So this isn't like something that we stumbled into some super peaceful country. This has always been a battleground. They don't call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires for nothing. The people like to fight. So when we went in there originally in 2001, we joined with the guys who were, the locals, the Northern Alliance. And when we basically joined them, we were accepted because we understood the culture. We found the allies that we could make. We made allies. We explained we have a mission. They were like, we're okay with that. Like, we'll support your mission. And they did, because they were like, we get it. Like, these, crazy extremists attacked your country, and they were cool with it. But I don't think what a lot of the Afghans were cool with was the nation building. I mean, because I talked to Afghans in Afghanistan, and they're like, I don't ever go to Kabul. Like, I don't go to the city. Like, I don't want nobody from the city telling me what to do. I mean, I had a guy I asked him, I was like, when's the last time you've been to, like, this city? And he was like, never been there. I've been in a lot of places in the United States, but, these people aren't like that. So they're not a cohesive people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if they live tribal, that's cool. Like, but we should have understood that, and we didn't, and that was a huge issue. So, a U.S. official who served as a liaison to NATO said in a government interview, "What are our objectives? Nation building, women's rights?" He said it was never fully clear in our own minds what the established goals and what the established timelines are. Because if you take, for example, what we did, we went in. We ran Osama bin Laden into Pakistan out of Tora Bora. We basically annihilated Al Qaeda, and then we were like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Because we basically went over there and kicked ass, and it should have been like a 12-month thing. And here's the thing: is like me not having been in the, me having gone to Afghanistan in 2011. If it was the time, if it wasn't for, if this thing would have ended when it was supposed to end, I would have never went to combat. I mean, that was a big part of my, that was a big part of my military career, And I mean, heck, probably the whole other, well, one of the deployments was a boat ride, but the other one to Kuwait, I mean, that probably wouldn't have been happening. So who knows? And um, so right here it says, oh, for somebody said, will this be recorded so I can watch later? Yeah, it'll be recorded. So if you want to come back and watch it later, that's fine. So, okay, so first, he says right here, first we went in to get Al Qaeda out of Afghanistan, even without killing bin Laden. We did that. Like I said, we went in, we schwacked Al Qaeda with the Northern Alliance, and then the Taliban was shooting back at us, so we started shooting at them, and they became the enemy. Now, here's the thing. One of the things that they don't know is right here they talk about it. A major mistake was treating the Taliban the same as Al Qaeda. That was one of the early things on that people didn't realize, was the fact that the Taliban and Al Qaeda are not the same. And people that say they're the same don't understand the culture. You do not understand there are key differences. One being, and one of my last podcast guests said this, was that the Taliban may have sponsored international terrorism, meaning by money, but they are not purveyors of international terrorism. They do not care. They want to establish the caliphate in Afghanistan. They do not, they'll say that the West is bad, but they're not coming to get you or your kids. And so that was one of the problems, is we treated the Taliban, especially early on, as Al Qaeda. So there were key Taliban leaders that were interested in giving, they wanted to kind of be like, okay, well, if you guys want us to do this, we'll participate in the West. But the problem is participating in the West is leadership, and kind of like the whole bourgeois thing that politics makes that out to be. They didn't care for that. They were like, what do we need to do to be respected on the world stage? But they wasn't going to change their culture. And that was one of the things that I think that the administration early on, that they didn't like. So right here it says the Bush administration categorized the Taliban leaders as terrorists because they had given Al Qaeda sanctuary. So this was the big nugget in the beginning. So talking about the beginning history, how Al Qaeda really kind of roped the Taliban in, was the Taliban refused to hand over Osama bin Laden. Now, the Taliban was easily demonized because of their Sharia laws, or more strictish laws. I think they had gotten better over the years. It seems to fluctuate. So, that's hard for me to say. Excuse me. All right. So right here, there was not much appetite for what we called a threat reduction for regional diplomacy and bringing the Taliban to the peace process. At that moment, the Taliban and Hizb Islami commanders were interested in joining the government. This official said in the debrief, he said that the lesson learned was, if you get the chance to talk to the Taliban, to talk to them. Now, I'm not saying that it would have worked. Like, who knows? I mean, if we would have brought them into the fold, could they have helped establish some kind of cohesive government? It's debatable. It's still debatable to this day. But I don't know. The fact that we didn't talk to them. I mean, if you look right now, we demonize Biden because he refused to talk to Putin, because we're like, oh, well, Biden didn't even talk to Putin for 4 years. Well, Bush didn't talk to the Taliban. Taliban ran the country before we invaded. Now granted that, like I said, it was a civil war-ish thing, but they had took over at some point before that, because they had outlawed the growth of poppy. The only reason they started to grow poppy again was to fund the war effort, which I think there's something on the Afghanistan papers in here. So, they talk about how they wasn't wise enough to talk to him, to talk to the Taliban. We essentially installed President Karzai. So he wasn't from Afghanistan. We install him, and this is where he wasn't really liked by the Taliban at all. He wasn't respected because he went to school in the West. So you're not really going to get he wasn't going to get any respect. So and then on top of that, there are different tribes, like the Pashtuns and the Tajiks and the different, like I was saying earlier, the different clans of Afghanistan. They don't want the other one to rule each other. So like when you start talking about making like a cohesive government in the capital of Kabul, one of the big issues is America's like, well, you need our system. Well, the problem was that didn't work because the Tajiks were like, well, you can't rule us, and so there was all this like bartering and like, well, if you let us get the finance minister, then we'll let you get this guy, and it became a clusterfuck of just people being bought out, and so that it just didn't work, and so because it didn't work, I think that was one of the reasons that it just wasn't. The government was never going to be cohesive. There may have been a compromise, like maybe if we'd have brought the Taliban in, because the Taliban kind of had enforcement. That was the one thing, is the tribes, other than like killing each other, really didn't have any legit enforcement when it came to like personnel, right? So I can put police here, I can quell this, I can do this. Well, the Taliban was the only one that had that ability because they were the only ones that had a following, a big following like that. And that's also why in the North, the alliances worked, like the Northern Alliance. They worked because they got along with each other, but that wasn't always going to be the case. So, um, so it says right here, oh yeah, right here. Yeah, I remember this. Okay, so on May 1st, 2003, while standing under a mission accomplished banner, the Bush mission accomplished banner on an aircraft carrier, Bush declared to end major combat operations in Iraq. I mean, so that can't be right. I thought, yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. On the same day. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sorry, I didn't finish it. My bad. On the very same day, Rumsfeld visited Kabul and announced a major end to combat activity in Afghanistan. Both declarations backfired spectacularly when Iraq descended into civil war. Meanwhile, the U.S. government fixated on Iraq and the Taliban. The Taliban slowly or steadily regrouped. So yeah. So first of all, this was the big deal, was when you talk about the Iraq War. The Iraq War pulled resources from Afghanistan. There are literally stories. I know old staff sergeants that said that when we were in Afghanistan, they were like, it was like we went from being the main priority to we disappeared. Like he was like, they were taking like planes, they were taking trucks, we were shipping everything back from Afghanistan over to Iraq. So that was a huge deal, that we basically were sucking resources out of a war we started and then turned around and never finished. So that's a big deal in the 2003, because then Iraq kicks up in 2005, 2006. So he said, at that time, but especially in the ensuing years, I often wondered, did we make a mistake? I'm part of this, obviously, so I have to own it. In deciding strategy, it would if there was going to be an endpoint. He said, I fault myself. And, we probably should have asked those questions more consistently around 2005 to 2006. And I mean, that's the thing, because now you get to the point where it's 2005, 2006 in Afghanistan. Now you've been there. Okay, we went in the December of 2001, I think 6 months after. Yeah, somewhere around in there. So 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. I mean, you're looking at 5 years, man. Like, it's just year after year, and no one's asking questions. This guy said, I tried to get someone to define for me what winning meant, even before I went over and over, but nobody could. Nobody would give me a good definition of what it meant. Some people were thinking in terms of Jeffersonian democracy, but that's just not going to happen in Afghanistan. There was no NATO campaign, a lot of verbiage and talk, but no plan. McNeil added, so for better or worse, a lot of what we did with some forethought, but most of it was reacting to conditions on the ground. We were opportunists. So, I mean, here is the big deal, is there was never a plan. There was never a plan. The plan originally was to go in and get Al Qaeda. I get that. I support that. I'm 100% behind that. But the problem is you can't just roll up into a country with $1 billion worth of equipment and an entire division of troops with no plan, like no get out plan. So even before the new commander in chief moved into the White House, U.S. military leaders recognized they needed a fresh war plan. So this is going to be, now we're moving up. Now we're zooming up here to around the time Obama got in. At the time I was looking at Afghanistan, I was thinking there has to be more to solving this problem than killing people, because that's what we were doing. Every time I went back, security was worse. So what I want to say is, when I joined the Marine Corps in 2008, one of the things I vividly remember is, and I talk about this on the podcast to other guys, and I asked them the same question, was when I was in high school, everything was Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. So I graduated in 2008. So basically around 2008, I had kind of forgotten about Afghanistan. I mean, I knew some people were still going there, but nobody wanted to go there. If you wanted to go shoot people, you wanted to go to Iraq. So one of the things that I remember vividly is when when our, like, well, first of all, 3-5, one of our sister battalions, went to not Marja, but they went to Sangin, and they got tore up in Sangin. Like, it was a bad deployment. And but so that got me thinking about Afghanistan. But then obviously, like, then I forgot all about it, and then when we got told we were going to Afghanistan, I was like, "Oh no!" I was like, "Does it?" Like, I was like, "I thought we were going to Iraq," because everybody's like, "It's Iraq, Iraq," but that just wasn't the case. So, all right. So, okay, here we go. All right. In 2009, this is McChrystal. So McChrystal's a famous general. He was over, I think, the whole NATO. Oh, so he's the then commander of U.S. Naval Forces. He wrote a 66-page assessment of the war that called for a properly resourced counterinsurgency campaign and laid out his proposed strategy in detail. The lessons learned interviewers, however, U.S. in the lessons learned, U.S. and allied officials said that McChrystal and Obama administration glossed over two basic questions: who were they fighting and why? And this is kind of where I'm at too, because it's 2008. We supposedly ran Al Qaeda out, but the problem is that the whole time between the years of like 2003 and 2006, 7, 8 ish, that's about what I'm going to put it in, is Al Qaeda is just, they are just getting super radicalized in Afghanistan, because we're still there, like small contingents, but nothing like what we had before. So this is the important part about this. So Obama had repeatedly declared the goal of the war was to disrupt, dismantle, and eventually defeat Al Qaeda. But the first draft of McChrystal's strategic review did not even mention Al Qaeda, because the group had all but disappeared from Afghanistan, according to an unnamed NATO official involved in the review. In 2009, the perception was that Al Qaeda was no longer a problem. The NATO official told government interviewers the entire reason for being in Afghanistan was Al Qaeda, so the second draft included them. So, literally, in 2009, the perception that Al Qaeda was no longer a problem, the NATO official told government interviewers. But the entire reason for being in Afghanistan was Al Qaeda, so the second draft included them. So they literally did not even put Al Qaeda in the first draft, that they were like, "Oh, this is why we're here." Why? Because they were gone. Ah. So, another jarring disconnect was that the United States and its allies could not agree on whether they were actually fighting a war in Afghanistan or doing something else. There are big implications with calling this a war, the NATO official added. Legally, under international law, that has serious implications. So, we checked with the legal team, and they agree it's not a war. To paper over the problem, McChrystal added a line in his report that said the conflict was not a war in conventional sense. So, we're literally funding this massive war, but we're not at war. Is literally what they're saying in 2008, 2009. Now, like, it's crazy because I think about like my personal experience right here, and it just makes me laugh, because this is like Like in 2008, 2009, I am like, it's time to get some because this is when I'm joining the Marine Corps. I mean, I'm like, let's get it, dude. So that's funny how like this whole time the government around the time I joined the military is like, we don't know. So an official description of the mission was even more convoluted. The long definition stated that the objective for U.S. and NATO forces was to reduce the capability and will of the insurgency and support growth in the capacity and capability of the Afghan National Security Forces (ANSF) and facilitate improvements in governments and socioeconomic development. Now, I will say that's the thing because by the time I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011, bro, there were dudes carrying cash. Like we were paying, if we blew some shit up, we'd have to pay for it. If we shot up some dude's house, we had to pay for it. If we killed his goat, we had to pay for it. So I think early on in the war, it was kind of like suck it. But by the time I got there, it was serious. So okay, okay. It says in 2009 Obama's military academy speech, he announced he would deploy 30,000 more U.S. troops to Afghanistan on top of the 70,000 that he and Bush had previously authorized. NATO and other U.S. allies would increase their forces to 50,000. But Obama added a last minute wrinkle that caught many of his senior advisors by surprise. He imposed a timeline on the mission and said that the extra troops would start to come home in 18 months. That timeline was sprung on us, Petraeus had said. And then 2 days before the president made the speech on a Sunday, we all got called and were told to be in the Oval Office that night for the president to lay out what he would announce 2 evenings later. And he laid it out. There it is. None of us have had that before, Petraeus said. And when they were asked, are you okay with that? He went around the room and everyone said yes. It was take it or leave it. So basically, Obama comes up with a plan on how to end the war in Afghanistan with literally never talking to his top generals. So he's basically like, yep, hey, here's the plan. I thought it over with the dog. The wife said it sounded legit. Like, I mean, Barnett Rubin, the Afghan expert that was serving as an advisor to the State Department at the time, told interviewers that he and U.S. officials were stupefied when they heard Obama reveal the timeline during a West Point speech. All the Taliban had to do was lie low, and U.S. and NATO troops were be gone. Now, I remember talking about that at the time. Was one of the things is they were just gonna wait us out. Like it didn't matter. Like honestly, even if you look at how it went, they were gonna wait us out anyways. Like it didn't matter. It never was gonna matter. Okay. Like Bush, Obama lacked an effective diplomatic strategy for dealing with the Taliban. In public, the Obama administration called for reconciliation between the Afghan government and the insurgents leaders, but the lesson learned interviewers show his advisors disagreed with that. So, Rubin, who is the Afghan advisor, said he favored talking to the Taliban, told interviewers that some hardliners um, that will be nice to people who surrender. In particular, Hillary Clinton was very reluctant to move on this because of her political aspirations. Um, Women are a very important constituency for her, and she couldn't sell making a bargain with the Taliban. If you want to be the first woman president, you can't leave any hint or doubt that you're not the toughest person on national security. I mean, the fact that Hillary Clinton had the chops to run for president after Benghazi is beyond me. Um, so he said, I never believed negotiations with the Taliban conducted by whomever were ever going to lead anywhere significant. Ryan Crocker said, who he served as Obama's ambassador to Afghanistan from 11 to 12. So, I mean, these dudes right here are just basically calling it out. He said that it was never going to go anywhere significant. I mean, I'm not saying that's not true, but, you know, um, uh, so the lessons learned, Obama officials acknowledged that they failed to resolve another strategic challenge that had dodged Bush and what to do about Pakistan. Washington kept giving Pakistan billions of dollars a year to help fight terrorism, yet the Pakistani military and intelligence leaders never stopped supporting the Afghan Taliban and giving sanctuary to its leaders. So the Obama administration just thought if you just hang in there, Pakistan will see the light. Like, no. Um, I mean, like that's the thing is Pakistan, we were telling this is the crazy thing that, and I remember being like 24 and realizing this. I'm like, why are we friends with Pakistan? Like, Pakistan literally harbors terrorism. You got dudes sitting on the border of Afghanistan sniping terrorists coming over the border from Pakistan. And I'm like, we know they're there. Obviously, Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan in the raid Operation Neptune. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's pretty cool. But, like we knew this was happening, but yet everyone's just obliviously being like, oh, let's give them millions of fucking dollars because that sounds like a great thing to do, of course. So, and he says, I'll be the one hedging our bets. You're right, because one day you'll be gone. It'll be like Afghanistan the first time. You'll be done with us, but we're still going to be here because we can't actually move the country. And that's the last thing we want with all of our other problems is to have turned the Taliban into a mortal enemy. So, yes, we are hedging our bets. So, that's basically a recounted conversation that General Kayani, who was Pakistan's intelligence chief, in which he was getting on him again about the Taliban. So, yeah, basically, like the Pakistan knows about the Taliban and they're willing to live with the Taliban. That's basically what that means. He's like, he doesn't want to turn them into a mortal enemy. Because, I mean, look, the Taliban's fighting Pakistan right now. So, this is years later after this come out. So, kind of funny how that worked out down the road. But, um, yeah, we just didn't. We didn't. Um, at first, hopes were high that Obama's strategy would turn the tide, but the military and civilian officials interviewed for the Cigar Project said it soon became clear that the lessons learned from one war zone did not necessarily apply to another. An unidentified Special Forces officer who deployed to Afghanistan in 2013 said that all the conventional forces thought it was just it would just be just like Iraq. They were constantly referring to it. He said, just because the villagers are wearing robes and speaking Durka Durka doesn't mean it's the same country. So yeah, like I mean, I don't know. I didn't go to Iraq, so it's hard for me to say, but I mean, I knew a lot of guys back in my time who were just like, I'm not gonna say some of the slang words we used, but I mean, we were just young kids and we were just like, fuck it, bro. Like, they're all fucking desert yetis anyway, dude. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, no one gives a fuck. They're like, this doesn't fucking affect us. I mean, we love the combat, but like, like as far as if you asked us about strategy, um, we didn't give a fuck, you know? Uh, so, because they were operating, so remember, Obama's like 18 months. So, because they were operating on a tight timetable, U.S. commanders first tried to clear areas where the Taliban was deeply entrenched, such as the Helmand and Kandahar provinces of southern Afghanistan. So, for those of you who don't know, if you've seen a picture of the desert in Afghanistan, you're probably looking at the Helmand. Um, the approach backfired when the U.S. officials lavished aid on districts that remained supportive of the Taliban yet neglected peaceful areas that sided with the government in Kabul. In a lessons learned interview, a senior official with the U.S. Agency of International Development said friendly governors from stable provinces would come to Kabul and ask, what do I have to do to get love from the Americans? Blow some shit up? Like, so they're literally like, we had dudes walking around with briefcases of cash, and apparently there were dudes rolling into the U.S. Agency for International Development being like, hey, I want to support the Americans. How do I do it? Um, we needed to go first where the fence sitters and low hanging fruit was and reward good behavior, the USAID official said, adding that Americans and their allies needed to reinforce people who are cooperating with the government so we can demonstrate success and create demand for it in insecure areas. But this takes time, as it should, and we didn't have time or patience. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that I don't give a shit what you do. If you give an Afghan money or you bribe like a village elder, I'm going to tell you right now that he is going to he's going to take that money, and then when the Taliban comes in the night, he's gonna, because you're not always gonna be there. Here's when you do a shura in Afghanistan and you talk to like a village elder and you try to develop that relationship with him, and so you're this random troop that showed up, but you're not the first and you won't be the last. And you go in there and you try to make legit promises to this guy and you try to legitimately like connect with this dude on like a level, you know what I mean? He doesn't get it because that would be like your FedEx dude trying to make you promises and connect with you on a spiritual level to basically turn around and be like, "Oh yeah, you got a new FedEx dude." Like, but I want you to tell me where the Taliban. I want you to give me secrets of some hostile person who's like, if you tell me where the FedEx man is, if you tell that dude where the FedEx man is, I'm gonna kill you. Like, but he's your neighbor. So the FedEx man is trying to get you to narc on your neighbor, but he gets replaced, and he's not the one who has to sleep here at night with the dude with a gun in the next compound over. Like, what did you think they were gonna do? They're not going to narc out the Taliban because they were scared of them, and because we couldn't protect them. Because you can't protect people from a guerrilla ideology. You just can't do it. So okay. All right. Oh shoot. I don't know if I got this hang on guys. Let me take a break right here. I don't know if I have oh. All right. I was just checking something. Sorry. All right. I'm sorry y'all, if y'all can hear my mouse dragging. My bad. Um okay. Yeah. Oh shoot. Okay. All right. So here we go. Dozens of Afghan officials told interviewers that the problems reflected a much deeper flaw. Despite years of war, the United States did not understand what was motivating its enemies to fight. The Taliban's presence was a symptom, but we rarely tried to understand what the disease was. Um, and I mean, I just told you, like that's it. Like there's not any crazy juice to this. The juice is that look at this photo. I want you to look at this photo. And I want you to really look at this photo. You can do patrols down here in this valley if you can see me moving the mouse, right? You can do patrols down here. And you might even have like a huge base over here. Let's say you got one right here. And let's say you got another OP right here. And let's say you got one right there. You still can't control what happens here. Like it just yeah. I mean, we did our best, but um, you know, yeah. So dozens of Afghan officials told interviewers that the problems reflected the much deeper flaws. So I already read that part. In a separate interview that year, Army Civil Affairs officer said, in order to clear, you need to know your enemy. You don't know your enemy, you're just tearing things down and pissing people off. Um, Shama Mahmood Makil, a senior Afghan official who now serves as the governor of the Nangarhar province, told interviewers there was a simple way to tell whether the U.S. strategy was working. I told Petraeus that in the counterinsurgency in which you don't know your friend, you don't know your enemy and environment, you're going to fail. I told him to check your list of people to be killed and captured and see if this has become longer or shorter. If this has increased, that means your strategy has failed. In March 2011, when he was commander of U.S. and NATO forces, Petraeus estimated there were somewhere between 25,000 Taliban, according to his testimony he gave Congress. Today, the U.S. military estimates the number has doubled to 60,000. Wow. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's hard to, you know, it it's hard to put it in words, some of the clear failures. Um, because there were some clear ones, and we're gonna go over some more. I'm um I'm gonna go over some more uh next stream. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do it because these things are gonna get long. I don't know why this OBS is over here trying to get me to do things. Okay, how much? Um, I'm trying to figure out the time. Mm. Oh, an hour and 6 minutes. Okay, yeah. So I'm pretty much gonna end this one here because that was the end of basically the. So uh, let me pull that back up. That was well, if I can find it, more stories. There it is. Okay, so that was basically talking about the strategy and about how there was no strategy. There never was. Um, and we're gonna get there's many parts to this. If I get some time to do like a 2 hour stream, I think I can get through some of these. And I did a lot of talking today about at the beginning, but these are going to be pretty quick to go through. I want to hit some of them, but there's we're going to talk about how the whole strategy was built to fail, the corruption, the the nation, like the fact that the Afghan security forces just didn't, they just got completely demolished. Opium, and then we're going to look at some of the actual people that basically went on the record. Well, they didn't go on the record because they tried to bury this thing. So I guess that's what I'll finish up with. So we're going to get more into the report, but the crazy part is how it all, in the end, they covered up the parts of the report they didn't want nobody to hear because they were super bad. So they were like, "Hey, everything's good, team good, right?" And so they left they left the good parts in. They took all the heavy criticism out, but the Washington Post, to their credit, didn't give up, and they got the actual interviews with all the people that basically said, "Yeah, this was a shit show," and yeah, so when they did that, then they wrote this massive thing. So it has all the names in it. They had to go to court. It took like 3 years to get this cigars report like unredacted, like basically all the actual information, who said what, when did they say it, and why did they say it, and have their names on the record. And that the name part isn't to shame someone. It's about like, okay, so Obama's Afghan advisor, the dude or this general or this person literally had no fucking clue what's going on. And they said it on the record. That's why we wanted the names, to prove that this wasn't just some happenstance fuck up. This was like somebody just didn't get the word. Like no one knew from the top. So, and I think that's important. Uh, yeah. So I appreciate you guys listening. Uh, thank you. And like I said, I'll be back to do another stream. All the streams are going to be recorded. I think Twitch records them. I know YouTube records them and X records them. So don't worry about it. If you don't catch the next one, watch it in the aftermath. And I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.